Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I want to set the stage by bringing us into the big context first, because I think it drives a lot of the things we encounter on a daily basis in organizations. And so the big context that business in general is in all over the planet is moving from this notion that organizations are like machines to this notion that organizations are much more like ecosystems. They're like rainforests, right? And so just think about this for a moment. Leading a rainforest, managing a rainforest, controlling a rainforest, not possible. However chaotic a rainforest might look, there's actually a lot of life thriving and changing and adapting and being quite good at matching its changing environment. So there's so much we can learn from moving from this mechanistic viewpoint to this ecosystemic viewpoint. And along with this, the thing that's sort of helping us, it's driving us toward this ecosystemic viewpoint is the fact that the world is really highly volatile right now. Would you agree? Yeah. We brought this term from the military, got brought into the Agile world a few years ago, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. Is that the A? Ambiguous, yeah. And I think when it got brought in, I felt it at the time. But boy, have I felt that in the last few years, definitely the last 5 years, the good and the bad. The good is that my phone works all over the planet right now. By the time I get off the plane, it's already on the Australian cellular and I'm not missing a beat. The technology has really helped us. Lots of things have helped us. Our interconnectedness with each other all over the planet has helped us. And, the bad is that, have you noticed that we're having some struggles on the planet? Yeah? That there are these really big forces happening that will impact business and continue to impact business in totally unpredictable ways. And if you thought that we were going to get back to normal after the pandemic, I think my prediction would be that we're not going to get back to any normal really at any point again. It's going to continue to be volatile. We're going to have to continue to respond to new things we did not. I know it's bad news. I get it. We'll have to continue to respond to changes as they occur. The good news is Agile helps us, right? The bad news is if we don't use Agile well, then we'll live in this world of pretending like we can treat things as machines when actually what's happening is an ecosystemic storm around us. Right. So, how does this make sense to you? Does it? Yeah? Can you feel how the bottom has dropped out of your own life and your own work? And you just don't have as solid a ground to stand on as you thought you did? Is that true for some of you? So this is likely to be the state that we'll be in for, I don't know how long, maybe forever, who knows? Organizations that are geared for a static, steady state. In other words, make a big change and then we can stay like that for a while. And then, something else happens. Make another big change and we can stay like that for a while. We used to actually get those periods of relative stability in between the shocks. That's unlikely to be our future. Our future is likely to be one shock after the next. So how can we move from an organization geared for a static, steady state to one that has a change, steady state? We can find steadiness in the way we adapt and deal with those changes as they come. That's our new safety. Our new safety is not making a specific outcome happen perfectly, like we actually used to be able to do, honestly, 10, 15 years ago. We had a lot better chance of doing that. Our new safety is in using Agile well to metabolize the changes as they come, one after the other, and to continue to adapt to our environment just like critters and plants and fungi adapt in the rainforest. Cool. So that's the big context we're in together. And a question arises then, if we are to become really good at this change steady state, where do we build that capability in our organizations? Because you're probably noticing that most people would much rather that we have the static steady state. Hallelujah, so would I. Too bad the world doesn't match that, right? And so our job is to continue to help people adapt the best way we can. And build the capability in our organizations so that we can metabolize change without freaking out every time. Yeah. So this is a good time for you to tell them what the heck you guys experimented with. Yeah.
Thanks, Lyssa. So I guess I'm going to start up and move around because why not? So what sort of new leadership models do you need when we talk about statics? What do we call it?
Static steady state to change steady state.
Change steady state. What sort of new leadership do we need? How can we build that capability in our people to be ready for that change steady state? So, is the answer chapters? I don't know. One answer is chapters and the chapter model. So when we look back to the tribal model and Spotify, when they decided to look at that model, they said, we're living in a VUCA world. This is my hypothesis. We're living in a VUCA world. We need to be ready to change. The traditional leadership models where we say the leader is in charge of everything. The leader is in charge of the product. The leader is in charge of the people, the capability uplift, everything. This leader needs to be superhuman, needs to be ready for that. In this new VUCA world, you don't have the attention span to look after product, understand where it's going next, understand where your new customers are. You don't have the attention span to care for your people, to develop them. But not only that, nurture the new capabilities which they need at an even more rapid rate. So by separating these roles, I think the tribal model did something quite special, and they said, you look after the product and make sure it's fit for purpose. You look after the people and make sure they're fit for purpose and can react and adapt to this ever-changing, more changing world. So when we talk about chapters, what we're talking about? We're talking about a community of people with similar skills and capabilities that are pulled together and are looked after, and their capability is developed. So, Epic, I want to share a story with you. So, Epic's story started maybe about 18 months ago, and we said, we are growing. We've doubled in size in the last 12 months. And we were looking to solve three main things. First thing was connection. Rob, I think, had about 28 direct reports at that time, which was unfair. Unfair for Rob, sure. But more importantly, unfair to the people that said, I need to be looked after as a human within this wonderful tribe. So what we wanted to do is strengthen that space, allow people to be really hyper-connected with their leaders, to be in smaller community groups where they could be vulnerable, where they could learn, where they could actually build psychological safety in a smaller group and have that human connectedness to really bond with each other. The good news is, I think that's happened really well. We'll talk about that a bit later. The second thing, which we've spoken a bit more about, is that capability. So how do we actually identify the capability that we're trying to uplift in our people and build that capability? And I'm going to talk about some of the challenges in that capability uplift. And thirdly, which is kind of interesting, is where do we find our new set of leaders in Epic? So where does the leadership come from? And the last thing, which Rob has already mentioned, is we need to taste our own medicine and see if it tastes nice or if it tastes a bit yucky, but actually makes us better. So traditionally, how you choose your leaders, we say, well, who are the high performers? Who are the people that are performing really well, or who are my lieutenant? Let's promote them, and they'll be in charge, and then they can just look after a bunch of people. But we were actually looking to who are going to hand over the leadership of Epic to. We're great believers in self-selection, but we doubled down on self-selection. We said, we want you, under 3 broad categories, team, program, and enterprise coach, to choose your own leaders, identify your leaders, who's going to self-select as a leader. And then out of those people, who wants to be with those people in their chapter. So that was quite confronting. I was in the enterprise chapter, and we had talks. I think you put your hand up first, because many people said, "Yeah, we want to be with Tubsy." So I was like, "Oh, well, we can't all be in the same chapter as Tubsy because it's a bit big." We had some guidelines around the size of the chapters. So I said, "Look, I'll put my hand up. If the leftovers that don't want to be with Tubsy, they can be with me." I'm not too fussed. No, I never joined Epic to be a line manager, a people manager. I've got great leadership background. I've been in the military for 16 years, in a slightly different type of organisation. But really I wasn't precious about being a leader or being a leader. If enough people came to join my chapter, then I was happy to leave it. Some others found it really vulnerable. They felt like they were the last picked at school. They put it out. Excuse me. They put it out there in the universe. I'm happy to be a leader, and they weren't sure whether people could afford it. And that was one of our lessons, I guess. That we said, well, maybe we choose the chapters and then let the chapters choose who's going to be the leader. Thank you. We also said self-selection, self-managing. Self-organising too. So we had to define the leadership structures, the chapter structures. When would a chapter be born? When would one close? What mechanisms would be that they choose their new leaders? What capabilities would they be aligned on? So all that was left to us to form and come up with guidelines, things that would work. And because the beauty around that is we own that, so we can change it. Something didn't work. We had experiments. We said one of our first experiments in my chapter was to say we don't believe that program, team, enterprise is a fair division. Actually, we don't have that hierarchy in Epic. It feels a bit like a hierarchy. So Scrum Master, team coach, enterprise coach, come join my chapter. And funnily enough, everyone benefited. So that was really cool. That was really cool. And having that muscle to own our own destiny and change things was really powerful. More powerful than here's the leaders, join the chapter, now that static state. We actually created that static change. That change. My challenges, so as I mentioned, my challenges in the military, so I was used to people leadership. And people's leadership actually doesn't change. I remember as a 20-year-old lieutenant speaking to a 29-year-old, trying to advise him about his marriage. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. I remember a young policewoman to a soldier's parents to tell them that their son had died with suicide. I was faced with lots of challenges in my military career, and I knew that looking after people was my prime function. And that doesn't change, even if you're in command control environments. That doesn't change. It goes all the way through to more agile environments, but what looks after people's inner agility. And that really is the duty of the chapter lead for the people lead. It doesn't have to be a chapter environment, which is why this I guess our thinking around this is so much broader than just chapters. It's how do you build the capability in agile organizations? Who looks after the inner agility of our people? Who focuses on that? So not only the capability, not only looking after great humans and attending to their human cost, but who looks after the inner agility of our people and ensures that they are actually effective in becoming better agilists and better people in the planet.
On the planet, in the planet. So this inner agility thing that Peter just said, it's a component of what we experimented with at Epic in creating Epic's own chapter uplift program. It's one component, inner agility, or inner development, inner capability. Another component obviously is outer agility, like what are the actual skills and practices that you have, or what are the new capabilities from a technology perspective or a marketplace perspective that we need in the organization. So inner agility, outer agility, and then communities that actually practice together. Because all of these things that we are all bringing into organizations are things that people are nervous to try. People are very nervous to have the kind of courageous conversations that we need to have when we're attending to people's capability uplift so that the organization can have a capability uplift, right? So the three components, inner agility, outer agility, and communities that practice. So of these three, the piece that Peter and I want to give you now is the inner agility piece, because we think it's a really big topic that people don't talk about a lot, and we'd like you to have a specific way, one of the many ways, to think about how could you attend to the inner agility of the people in your organization, whether they're chapter leads or program leads or community center of excellence leads, whatever you call them, right? How can you attend to their inner agility so that they can then turn around and do the same for the people who they care for? Does that make sense? Yeah. So when I say inner agility, what I am literally talking about is a person's mental complexity. We just started talking at the beginning of this about that we're in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, right? So you have to have a significant amount of mental complexity to hold the ambiguity and not freak out, to hold multiple competing priorities, multiple competing perspectives in your mind at the same time, right? We are at the point on the planet where truly novel ideas are needed, right? And so they're going to come from people who are able to see more, people who are able to come up with many more options before deciding on the thing they want to try next. That makes sense? So the good news is that we are wired to develop our whole life long if we choose to. Adults can keep developing all their whole life, and there are all of these ways of becoming a more complex being, essentially to be more of a match for the complexity of the situations you're in. Okay, so the one doorway into this that we want to give you today is amber, orange, green, teal. As soon as you swallow, you can say this with me. Amber, orange, green, teal. Again, amber, orange, green, teal. One more time. Amber, orange, green, teal. Oh, wait, nice. Okay, who knows what we're talking about already? And who is like, yeah, who's like, no idea. That was a little weird. Okay, fair enough. Good. So I want you to continue this chant, amber, orange, green, teal. We're going to talk about 4 levels of adult development. We're going to talk about it as if we're talking about an individual human being, because that's the easiest way to get into the subject. But this also applies to parts of an organization, a product team, a whole organization. It actually applies to whole societies, right? Same basic levels of adult development. Essentially because businesses and societies are made up of humans. Okay, so amber. So we've got another little game for you. Peter's going to hold up a sign, and this sign says, what does it say? Truth force. So I say amber, you say? Truth force. I say amber, you say? Truth force. Amber. Amber. There you go. In a nutshell, that's what Amber is about. So Amber is, imagine someone who truly believes that there is a capital T truth. And if I discover that truth and I create a process to align and produce that truth, I don't have to do anything else again. I just have to repeat that again and again and again and again and again. So someone who's primarily organized at this level of adult development needs procedures. They need roles. They need rules. And they could be pretty complicated. That's fine. They're fine with that. But you would not necessarily throw them into an Agile room and say, okay, yeah, we're all going to volunteer for tasks now. How's that going to go? Right? Deer in headlights. So let's be clear that Agile can be quite violent, actually, to a lot of people when they first encounter it, because Agile comes from a different level of mental complexity. So Amber, let's just ground what is so good and wonderful about Amber. People, organizations that are organized primarily at Amber have honor running through their blood. I mean, the belief system is if I do my duty and I do it well, I've done my part. And I trust that someone else has the bigger vision. That's okay, I don't need to know the bigger vision. I've done my part and there's honor in doing my part. And I believe that I will be rewarded eventually. Does that make sense? Now you can probably already start to feel the downside of Amber. What are some of the downsides of Amber in our modern world? Too rigid, yeah. When new stuff comes flying in from left field, we can't change very easily. What's another downside of Amber? Just make it up.
A lack of connection to purpose.
Yes, lack of connection to purpose. Yes. And now you're starting to inch over to why people go to the next level. Exactly. Yeah, what else? What's the downside of Amber?
Bureaucracy. Start with bureaucracy.
Oh my gosh. Bureaucracy like crazy. Yeah. It's just hard to get the basic work done after a while because we keep creating more and more complicated processes every time we encounter something unusual, thinking that if we just add that to the process, then we'll never have to encounter that thing again. This is how you get, I swear to God, this is how you get the 300 question, what do we call it? Production assurance certification before you could put something in production. Right? So these are the downsides, and I would say that's the unhealthy expression of Amber. But here's what adults do when they encounter things that are confounding to them. They have this inkling that they're now in a little bit of a different world, and maybe the ways that used to cope with the world aren't going to work as well. But you know what they do? They double down on the way that they know how. Right? So this is how we get the unhealthy expression of these levels. Okay. So amber, orange, green, teal. Where are we going next? Orange. Okay. So orange is, I say orange, you say? I say orange, you say? Orange. Orange. Yes. Okay, can you already feel how this one's really different? I mean, do you feel like we've gotten a little bit of like competition and like vitality in the space? Like, yeah, we want something. So the reason that human beings and that organizations in total move from their center of gravity at amber to orange is that we need to innovate. And on an individual level, I see an opportunity. I'm willing to take a risk because I want a reward now, right? I don't want to wait for my boss and my boss's boss and my boss's boss to buy into the idea. I want to move now, right? And so this is all about like acquisition of things. Acquisition of knowledge, acquisition of market share, acquisition of stuff. So this is where the certification craze comes from, right? If I just get that next certification, then I'll be ready, or I'll be more marketable, or I'll be X, whatever it is. Yeah. So the upside of orange is innovation. It's adaptability. It's using the scientific method in order to guide our next steps. Empiricism, right? And it's being willing to change. pivot when we need to. So, do you know the unhealthy side of orange? Have you experienced it yourself? It can get to be a little bit dog eat dog, you know?
Conflicting agendas.
And conflicting agendas. Everyone wants their own kingdom, right? Yep. Hard to create a vision that will pull the majority of people forward. Lots of conflicting priorities. And after a while, the real downside of this is that relationships become transactional. It's basically like, yeah, we'll work together as long as you can give me something I want. Because it's very individualistic, this one. I'm out for my own agenda, essentially. And whatever that is, the raise, the title, whatever that agenda is. Right, so that's the downside of orange. Now, meantime, while orange was really on the scene, technology started to really allow us to be connected all over the planet, and we started to work with people all over the planet. And so we started to find out that, we're on one planet together. And this is part of what gave rise to the next one. So amber, orange, where are we going? Green. Green. Green is human bond. I say green, you say? Human bond. Okay, that one's too hard to say 4 times. Human bond. So the idea of green is, hey, our situations are too complex for any one person to know what to do, or for us even to break it down into its component parts and have a subject matter expert for this part, and one for this part, and one for this part, and they do their thing and we bring it together. It's like way too complex for us to operate that way anymore. So we know we have to bring people together, and it's in bringing people together where the new idea surfaces, where the novel thing comes forward. And in fact, it's in the friction of the diversity and the difference that something great emerges. And so with green, with human bond, we basically have the idea that if we get the relationships right, everything else is going to follow. And we don't just tolerate diversity, we seek it, because we know we need lots of different perspectives, right? And the idea is we want all of us to be able to thrive on the same planet. So it's a very world-centric kind of perspective. Now, if you have people sitting around talking to each other all the time about the latest complex thing they're dealing with, you might start to now feel the downside of green. Anyone experience the downside of green ever? Yeah? Yeah, so what is the downside?
No one's doing anything.
Yeah, we're sitting around talking, no one's doing anything. Hard to take action. Kumbaya, my lord. Yeah, we all feel good. And it's funny that there's a sort of 180-degree thing that happens with green, is that we want to have the diversity, but we actually don't want to face anything really challenging. We keep it all on the level of like, oh, we're good. We're good. Yeah? You're laughing, okay. Yeah, so all of that. Now, the people who study this tell us we're moving through green faster than we've moved through any of the other levels, because basically here's the only thing we're picking up in green that's really helpful to us: multiple perspectival view. So I can take in multiple perspectives, more than I could before, and basically my level of mental complexity is a little more of a match for the world. Make sense? Okay. Now, because green has this sort of unhealthy expression that it gets to really fast, a lot of people and organizations are starting to move to the next one: amber, orange, green. Teal. And what's teal's phrase? Flex flow. Flex flow. That's weird, isn't it? Flex flow? So teal is the first level that says, hey, there's nothing wrong with any of the other ones, as long as they're fit for purpose, as long as it's a healthy expression. Great. I mean, don't you want to know that banking systems run and that the money you put in your account is going to be there tomorrow? Right? I mean, that's a healthy amber. Absolutely. Right? And the idea of teal is that let's have all of the levels be healthy. Let's attend to the integration of them so that we can truly adapt to what's going on in the moment. So flex flow is also very impact driven. So someone organized at teal, otherwise known as flex flow, will have a sense of the impact they want to make in the world, and they're going to align themselves with other people who want to make a similar impact. So you'll see people moving organizations. Maybe not quite frequently, but when their desire to have this impact gets hampered, they'll move, right? This is also the first level that we bring in wisdom beyond rationality. In other words, using more of our intelligences than just this stuff up here and just the stuff we can put on a spreadsheet, right? There's so much more intelligence we can bring in to make decisions, and we do that at teal. Now, if you are trying to uplift the capability of your organization, and you are bringing to the people of your organization skills, practices, ideas that are from a different level of adult development than they are at, they're going to nod and they're going to be like, yeah. And then they're totally not going to get it. And this is not a failing. It's just that this is where they're organized at this particular time. So one of the things about human development is that people naturally have to reject things that don't fit the way they make meaning of their world. Right? And so this is a little bit about how chapter leads, program leads, capability leads in organizations need to match the people they're working with. They need to be able to speak the language that makes sense. Right? So if we're talking all this Agile mumbo jumbo and we're talking to someone who's organized at Amber, well, what's going to make sense is, oh my God, look at all this data Agile's going to give us. Look at the throughput metrics that we can calculate. Look how we can get more efficient at what we're doing. That makes sense, right? Orange, what do you think it's about at Orange? Take a guess, come on. What is it about?
Back to strive and drive.
Strive, drive. Money, money, money. Money. It's what it's about at Orange. It's about money as a placeholder for a feeling of success. Market share or personal success, whatever it is. Right? And so you talk to someone organized at Orange about Agile, you want to talk about results and accomplishment. That makes sense for the way they see the world. And now when we start to get to green and teal, now you can start talking about collaboration. You can start talking about customer intimacy, which is actually a valid strategy at green and teal, right? But you have to be careful because we're all living in the world where we're trying to please each other. And so when you bring in these ideas that don't necessarily match someone's worldview, it's going to seem like it's fine. And then you'll be like, why isn't this working? So attending to people's inner agility, their ability to make sense of their world and helping them mature that expands the range of capabilities that you can help them with in their outer agility, like the literal skills that you bring to them or the practices you ask them to do or the ways you ask them to work together. That makes sense? And then the third component is practicing. Having a place to practice the skills, practices, processes, new things you bring, because these are all countercultural at this point. Everything we're doing in Agile is still quite countercultural. Wow, the room is really still. This is really good. Stay where you are. Because what I want you to do is have a quiet conversation, maybe with the person next to you, and just tell them what you're thinking related to what you just heard. You might even think about an impediment you're dealing with, or a desire you have for like a new opportunity to take advantage of an opportunity or something like that. And like, how is that related to what you just heard? So this is going to be just about a 3-minute conversation, which means only about 90 seconds a person. You're not going to like tell your whole life story, spill your guts, all that sort of stuff. Just tell them what you're thinking about related to something real in your world. Does that make sense? And it's for your benefit, so go for it.